Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for WallStreetWindow.com. Mike Swanson is a successful former hedge fund manager whose site is unique on the web. Subscribers are allowed a window into Mike's very real main account and receive announcements and explanations for all his market moves. The Federal Reserve has been inflating the money supply to finance the bank bailouts and terror war overseas. So Mike's betting on commodities, mining stocks, European markets, and other hedges against a depreciating dollar. Play along on paper or with real money, and then be your own judge of Mike's investment strategies. See what happens at WallStreetWindow.com. All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. I'm Scott Horton. This is my show. Streaming live from my website, scotthorton.org. Keep all my interview archives there, more than 2,800 of them now, going back to 2003. Whole show archives, too, last few years' worth, anyway. scotthorton.org. Also streaming from noagendastream.com, No Agenda Global Radio, and all over the place, talkstreamlive.com, for one. All right, first guest, Marcy Wheeler, Empty Wheel, they call her in the blogosphere, because that's the name of her blog. And I'm very happy to talk with you again. Hi, Marcy, how are you?
Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you joining us today. So you've already got 3, at least last time I checked, I guess it could be 4 now, articles about the Department of Justice's persecution of the Associated Press. Give us the lowdown.
Man, they went nuclear on these guys. They, apparently last Friday, the AP got a letter, which nobody has seen except for the AP, saying, oh, by the way, some time ago we grabbed the phone contact information for 20 phone lines in 4 offices and at least 2 of your reporters' home lines from April and May of last year. And that's about all we know that they said. It's not even clear that they said, and we did this because you guys apparently scooped the White House on announcing a CIA thwarted al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula plot by 8 hours, which is really what this is about. It goes back to May 7th of last year. The AP reported that the CIA had thwarted UndieBomb 2.0. I think you and I actually talked about this last year.
Yeah, we did. And in fact, let me pardon me, but let me interrupt you for just a second. I think people might be familiar with this if they spend much time on Facebook like I do, and I don't know why I do. I'm just stuck to that thing. But anyway, the headline in The Guardian made it seem like they were talking about the underbomber from Christmas 2009, Abdul Muttalib, saying he was a CIA agent or something like that. And so the truthers like passing that one around. People are probably familiar with that headline because it's a misleading one. Everyone loves it so much. But in fact, that article was about this plot where, in fact, it was an inside job. It just didn't get as far as someone actually trying to light a bomb in their underpants over Detroit is all.
Yeah, I mean, what the AP reported made the CIA look good. They said, oh, my gosh, CIA interrupted this plot. Good for them. Whoopty-whoopty. And they said in there, you know, we figured this out last week. The White House said, don't go with the story yet. We held off. And then they told us that they were going to roll out this big announcement tomorrow morning, so we're publishing now. That's what the AP story said. And that came out at about, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So John
and now the
Brennan
actual plot, then, do I understand it right, Marcy, that the actual plot was basically one of these FBI put-up job type things?
Well, it wasn't FBI. It was...
no, but I mean in the sense of the entrapment and the way it was never meant to go anywhere. It was just enough to bust somebody, right?
No, it was even worse than that. I mean, that's the thing. This is where what John Brennan did was because the guy who was going to carry out the plot was a Saudi British infiltrator into AQAP. So we think that Abdul Muttalib really believed that he was an Al-Qaeda warrior, right? Mm-hmm. The guy who did this plot was in the pay of the British and the Saudis. So, I mean, it was an inside, it was a sting at best. All we did was prove that Ibrahim al-Asiri still is willing to give some moke who walks in off the street explosive underwear. Right.
So, in other words, what they made this scandal out of was the behavior of the informant, not the guy, not anyone he was really successful in duping, is what you're saying.
Precisely.
Okay.
And we only found out that it was a double agent. I mean, the double agent isn't actually the right term, but we'll call it a Saudi infiltrator. But that's not even, that's shorthand. We found out that it was a Saudi infiltrator, not from the AP, but because John Brennan got on the horn and he called all the people who used to have his job, counterterrorism czar at the White House, and said, look, the AP just broke this story, and I know you're about to go on your TV stations, and just so you know, we always had inside control of this. So he's the one who said that it was an insider, that we had somebody in the middle of the plot. And then Richard Clark, who's a pretty smart guy, knows how this works, says, inside control sounds to me like an insider. I don't know, but I suspect he called some Saudis who were already blabbing about this, and they confirmed that his suspicions were correct. And so ABC actually broke the most damaging part of this, which is that the Brits and the Saudis had infiltrated this guy into AQAP. But even there, the last time we had an AQA plot targeting the United States, the Saudis and the Yemenis revealed that themselves. This was back in 2010, the toner cartridge plot. We had sources in the Middle East bragging about having gotten this former Gitmo detainee, Jabir al-Faisi, infiltrated into AQAP. So even there, it was bad. It's stupid. That shouldn't happen. But that happened the last time we had one of these Saudi-infiltrated plots.
Mm-hmm. So I don't really get it. So the White House got really upset that these reporters revealed their sort of pseudo-bogus sting. What was the point? They wanted to make a big orange alert out of it, it sounds like, but then you say it was Brennan himself, Obama's counterterrorism czar, now the head of the CIA, right, who undermined, just what a big deal it was, that they had stopped something that was a real threat. He said, it wasn't a real threat, it was a put-up job by us.
Yeah, and I think, and I did a post on this last year, because the White House did do a big dog and pony show to announce the thwarted toner cartridge plot. And we have every reason to expect they would have done precisely the same thing last year when this, quote-unquote underwear bomb plot was, quote-unquote, thwarted. Mm-hmm. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to get the news cycle. They wanted to be able to spin this out the way they wanted.
And then later they chose to downplay it.
That's all the AP prevented them from doing. That's it.
Mm-hmm. And then later they chose to downplay it once the AP scooped them, basically.
Well, I mean, I think Brennan is just, he just screwed up. But meanwhile, I mean, part of the other thing that was going on is the Republicans were getting really sick of the Obama administration doing kind of politicized leaks. And they figured this was an opportunity to make hay over it. Peter King, who loathes the reporters in question. The reporters are Adam Goldman and Matt Apuzzo are the two main reporters, and they were the ones who broke the NYPD spying story. Got a Pulitzer for it about this time last year. And Peter King loathes them because he loves Big Brother. He loves Ray Kelly, and so he really went on a rampage. And so I think what really happened is it made it really convenient for the White House to launch an investigation into that story, but not, for example, to launch an investigation into all the convenient leaks on drone targeting that were happening at the exact same time. So even then, the White House was picking and choosing which highly classified stories they wanted to investigate, which ought to tell you something.
Sure, of course. I mean, they deliberately leak things all day. And anonymous administration officials claim that's almost always because it's classified. Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what it is like, throw out the notion of classified information. What this administration wants to be able to do is have absolute control over when and how stories come out. They're happy to leak classified information. That's what the White House was going to do in this case. They just want to have complete control over the spin on that story. They don't want to be preempted by actual real reporting. And that's what this is about. This is a campaign against actual real reporting as opposed to White House managed spin on classified stories, which they don't have any problem with.
Right. And then, okay, so now, I don't know how to compare this to any sort of legitimate police activity, but did they just go absolutely, completely overboard with the records that they took, or with the wiretapping? Were they tapping the phones, or they were just, after the fact, they went to look at who got called by who, and how much overreach is this on a scale of 1 to Richard Nixon or something?
It's not Richard Nixon, as far as we know. But the problem is, and they didn't wiretap the phone calls. What they got were the phone records. So in other words, what they have is a list of every call out from these 20 AP lines for 2 months. They know everybody at the AP from these 4 offices, these journalists' personal cell phones, home phones. They know everybody they called for a 2-month period, which means they have some idea of the potential sources for the story that they claim to be investigating, but they also know everybody that the AP in this 4-office area is using as a source. And so that's where I suspect that that this will be legal to a point, but I suspect that DOJ couldn't have actually gotten subpoenas for this if they had told the AP ahead of time, because DOJ requirements say you need to minimize. You need to get only what you need. You also need to negotiate with the journalistic outlet to do that, to minimize what you're asking for. And instead of doing that, they claimed in one of the most public leak investigations in the last 10 years, and there have been many public ones, but this one's huge, they claimed that that would impair the investigation. So in other words, I mean, we all know this investigation's been going on, but they claim that by making it publicly known, or even making it publicly known to the AP that they were going to start going after reporters' contacts, it would ruin the investigation.
Now, what's the reaction been, I guess, in the rest of the press? Because the AP's the AP. It's not like somebody that's easy to pick on. That's the big time, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even think it had to be the AP. I think that people in journalism are really appalled by 2 things. One is that the AP got no advance notice, and the second is that they took so many phone calls. I mean, there are a couple examples from the Bush administration, particularly one with John Solomon going back to 2001, where they took just his call contacts and didn't tell him until after the fact. And there was pretty big outrage then, but it was just one journalist. And in this case, they're taking 20 phone lines, which is where it really becomes clear overreach. I mean, there's not a really easily conceivable reason why they would need to take all of that.
They're just fishing to see what else they can find as long as they're at it.
And they're also basically threatening journalism. They're saying, if you publish a story, if you preempt my story, they're not even saying if you publish a story on a leak that I want you to publish. They're
right.
saying if you preempt my ability to spin out a story the way I want to, I'm going to take and ruin your source base across 20 phone lines. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, well, and just think about what they're learning, too, about how the AP works and what all their sources and methods are and all their, stuff that is none of their business
and that's
at
what
all.
we found out. That's how we found out about this. The AP president wrote a letter to Eric Holder saying, this is gross overreach and you're taking our core business. And it's true. I mean, this taints, in addition to Goldman and Apuzzo, there were a couple of other national security journalists. One of them is Kimberly Dozier. She had another story that in that same time period that basically relied on what I think are military sources complaining about John Brennan doing things with drone targeting. Now they know who those military sources are. So they're getting more than they need. And it's like a pitcher hitting a batter. They're doing it deliberately, and they're doing it to get reporters to back off and let them spin their stories the way they want.
Mm-hmm. And now, the national security letter versus subpoena. I think the first I heard about this, it was some kind of just executive subpoena or administrative subpoena or NSL. or was this from the court?
Yeah, we don't know. And it's not even clear AP knows. Probably it was a subpoena. And if it was a subpoena, all those rules I talked about earlier would apply, meaning DOJ would have had to go to a judge and claim, we've tried everything else. We just can't get these records. We can't figure out who leaked this information except by getting these records. And we think 2 whole months just to get the sources for one story. And they got call records for 3 weeks after the story itself. So there's, it's grossly expansive, but if they got a subpoena, they don't actually need a judge. All they need to do is get Eric Holder to sign off on it. But then there is another option, which is national security letters, where Holder doesn't even need to sign off on it. The DOJ recently in 2011 changed their policy and said, we think it's okay to use national security letters with journalists in certain national security investigations, which this would be. So no judge. They maintain, they get to decide whether they've met their own standards for broadness and whether they've met their own standards for whether telling the AP they were going to go get these phone records would have impaired the investigation. And that's the problem. It's basically just DOJ deciding on itself it's going to go nuclear against one of this country's, pretty moderate. They're not flamethrowers, the AP, by any shade, but they're going to go out and take out much of their national security staff.
Yeah, but that's what the Fourth Amendment says, that the right to be secure in your person's house's papers and effects shall not be violated unless a cop feels like it.
Well, or in this case, unless Attorney General Holder feels like it. Yeah. And that's the thing. What's really important to remember is DOJ does this all the time. DOJ does this all the time, particularly against Muslims, but they use this kind of investigative method without court oversight all the time. So to some degree, the fact that they did it to a bunch of journalists really should only tell us that they have no limits, that they have lost all sense of perspective on these authorities. But we should remember that, you and me, because they're going to claim that we're just crazy people and not journalists like the AP, and more especially, people of color are going to be exposed to these investigative tactics a lot more than the AP.
Yeah. Well, and now, I'm sorry, this is kind of a silly question, but what, if any, accountability can we expect for what's happened here?
We'll see. What's interesting, it was pretty bad timing on the part of DOJ because Eric Holder already had an oversight hearing scheduled for Wednesday. And so he's going to have to answer some questions about this from the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. I suspect that, like I said, it's not even clear the AP knows how DOJ got these records. So I think they're probably going to challenge, I assume they're going to challenge this in court if DOJ doesn't start negotiating with them right away. I suspect that DOJ will try and avoid going to court because some of their arguments are going to be untenable in court. But who knows? Maybe one of the things DOJ is trying here is not only to go nuclear against the AP, but also to establish this broad new standard for journalists that would make journalist contacts unprotected. That's possible. One of the things I note is that you would think this would have been investigated in Virginia, which is where the CIA is. It's supposedly a CIA secret that got leaked the way it normally would be. But there's a case in Virginia where it may reinforce the notion that journalists do have some protection against this kind of subpoena. And so I sort of wonder whether DOJ went to D.C. because in D.C. you've got the D.C. Circuit, which is full of crazy people who love executive power.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of, I guess, pleasantly surprised to hear you say that it's any different in Virginia. I always thought that they had the reputation of being just as harsh, but I guess in this case there's one little wrinkle in it, huh?
Yeah, if you remember the James Rice and Jeffrey Sterling case,
yeah,
based on Merlin, So in that case, there was a hearing on whether or not Ricin would be subpoenaed almost a year ago today. I mean, it was May 18th of last year, and the judges still haven't ruled in that case. But they seemed a little skeptical of what DOJ was saying, and the judge in that case has already held that Ricin didn't need to testify in court. So I think, it's possible, and I'd have to check whether Holder announced that D.C. was going to get this before. I'd have to check on the timing, but it's possible that Holder, having seen how skeptical the judges were in that case, threw it into D.C. because, like I said, the D.C. circuit is full of crazy people right now.
Yeah, well, there's no surprise. Okay, now listen, in the last few minutes here, I was hoping you could tell me about, I didn't even have a chance to read it, but I saw that you wrote a thing about the biometric national ID card, at least de facto national ID card, in the new immigration bill, and I was wondering if you could give us the bad news there.
Yeah, I remember Real ID was this effort to make sure anybody who got hired in the United States was eligible to work. And they always roll this out every time they talk about immigration. And as it exists as of now, I mean, they're marking up the bill right now, but as it exists, the new comprehensive immigration reform doesn't require IDs, which in my mind, if you're going to develop this database of biometrics, IDs would be better. But just wants to put together a database of biometrics from everybody who has a government-issued ID in the country. So it affects the same thing. I mean, in other words, it collects all the same information that makes Real ID a problem. And so they would have, pick retina scans and stuff from you and I just because we have driver's licenses. But, of course, it wouldn't at the same time allow for universal voting registration, which is what other countries' universal IDs use them for. So it's kind of the worst of all worlds. And then add to that the fact that in the last year the government has basically given to the National Counterterrorism Center the ability to get any federal database they want so long as they say it has terrorist information. And you can see how quickly this database tied to employment would be used to, data mine you and I along with potential terrorists to see whether we can be arrested or what have you.
Right.
It's a mess.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, under the Constitution, as I understand it, the national government isn't even really in any position to even know who the people in the country are. We don't even, unless they're delivering the mail to us in that sense, something like that. But now it's getting to the point where, well, geez, they've been collecting all our digital information like this at the state level all along, and now all they got to do is integrate it and turn the whole country into Minority Report with the flip of a switch, basically, with the passing of a law.
Right, and that's the move alone is concerning because it basically does what Real ID always would have done, but done together with the way they do counterterrorism programs is what makes it so scary because they've already done, for example, they've said, okay, we're going to take this immigration database because sometimes terrorists immigrate, and we're going to dump it into the data mining program that National Counterterrorism Center already uses. So they're going to do that kind of thing, but they're going to do it with the data, they would have the authority to do it in any case. They're going to do it with a database that would include every adult.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed.
Well, I saw a really cool ACLU statement on this, better than I would have thought, where they talked about how, in the future it's going to be like you're going to have to use this biometric data to do anything, to go anywhere, and it's fundamentally, as Newt Gingrich say, fundamentally and profoundly changing the relationship of the individual to the state. We're moving into a situation where we will have to all ask permission to do anything, which is, it's funny the way they put it because that's exactly the way I was taught it is in the slave state of the Soviet Union when I was a kid. In America, you're free unless you really commit a crime, do something wrong, then the government will come and get you. But other than that, you do whatever you want. But in the Soviet Union, you got to ask first, and mostly you just go along with what they want you to do, and that's That was the exact phraseology, of the ACLU statement there.
Right, precisely, and that's the thing, is that it's been creeping like this for 10 years, 12 years now. I mean, we talk about this all the time, and some of the databases are invented for different reasons, and this one is invented so as to placate Republicans and allow the people who do our labor for us to actually live legally. I mean, so it's a trade-off, and people are making the trade-off for good reason, but they're not thinking through the consequences of what's going to happen to this database and how it'll get reappropriated, and there you have it. Oh,
yeah. Well, no, see, I don't think it's any of my business who you employ at all, database or not, so that's right, the whole thing. I remember, probably late 90s, it was the Deadbeat Dad database. Oh, you know what? The national government needs to know where everyone in America works at all times, because of deadbeat dads. And everybody was just like, all right, whatever, you say so. So I guess that was kind of the first sort of attempt at this, and they'll use immigration or any other excuse that they can to create as many databases as they can. See, what's fun is, sooner or later it'll just be a matter of computer power, right, where your license plate is tied to your IRS account and all of your health care and all of your traffic warrants in other states and everything, and the traffic cameras picking you up, and it's all tied together, Not too far from there at all. With your iris, the print of your iris. And yet all of those databases didn't find the Tsarnaev brothers before they struck at Boston. It's not actually working for its intended purpose, right, but it is working for a bunch of other purposes that are secondary and not advantageous at all. Yep, it's so true. All right, well, listen, I really appreciate your blogging and all your writing and your time on the show, as always. All right, take care. All right, everybody, that is Marcy Wheeler, EmptyWheel.net is her blog. And she's already got 3 on the Associated Press, beginning with, I think, DOJ. It goes nuclear on Goldman and Apuzzo. Over at AQAP, the leaders of the Israel lobby in Washington, D.C., they're constantly proclaiming unrivaled influence on Capitol Hill, and they should be proud. The NRA and AARP's efforts make them look like puppy dogs in comparison to the campaigns of intimidation regularly run by the neoconservatives and Israel firsters against their political enemies. But the Israel lobby does not remain unopposed. At the Council for the National Interest, they put America first, insisting on an end to the empire's unjustified support for Israel's aggression against its neighbors and those whose land it occupies, and pushing back against the lobby's determined campaign in favor of U.S. attacks against Israel's enemies. CNI also does groundbreaking work on the trouble with evangelical Christian Zionism and neocon-engineered Islamophobia and drumming up support for this costly and counterproductive policy. Please help support the efforts of the Council for the National Interest to create a peaceful, pro-American foreign policy. Just go to councilforthenationalinterest.org and click Donate under About Us at the top of the page. And thanks. Oh, man, I'm late. Sure hope I can make my flight.
Stand there.
Me? I am standing here.
Come here.
Okay.
Hands up, turn around.
Whoa, easy.
Into the scanner. Ooh, what's this in your pants?
Hey, slow down. It's just my...
Hold it right there. Your wallet has tripped the metal detector. What's this? The Bill of Rights?
That's right. It's just a harmless stainless steel business card-sized copy of the Bill of Rights from SecurityEdition.com. There for exposing the TSA as a bunch of liberty-destroying goons who've never protected anyone from anything. Sir, now give me back my wallet and get out of my way. Got a plane to catch.
Have a nice day.
Play a leading role in the security theater with the Bill of Rights Security Edition from SecurityEdition.com. It's the size of a business card, so it fits right in your wallet, and it's guaranteed to trip the metal detectors wherever the police state goes. That's SecurityEdition.com. And don't forget their great Fourth Amendment socks.
Hey guys, I got his laptop.
Hey everybody, Scott Horton here. Ever think maybe your group should hire me to give a speech? Well, maybe you should. I've got a few good ones to choose from, including how to end the war on terror, the case against war with Iran, central banking in war, Uncle Sam and the Arab Spring, the ongoing war on civil liberties, and of course, why everything in the world is Woodrow Wilson's fault. But I'm happy to talk about just about anything else you've ever heard me cover on the show as well. So check out youtube.com/Scott Horton Show for some examples, and email Scott at scotthorton.org for more details. See you there. Admit it, our public debate has been reduced to reading each other's bumper stickers. Scott Horton here for LibertyStickers.com. I made up most of them, and most of those when I was mad as hell about something. So if you hate war, empire, central banking, cops, Republicans, Democrats, gun grabbers, and statists of all stripes, go to LibertyStickers.com, and there's a good chance you'll find just what you need for the back of your truck. Own a bookstore? Sell guns at the show? Get the wholesaler's deal. Buy any 100 stickers and they drop down in price to $1 a piece. You can spread the contempt and make a little money too. That's LibertyStickers.com. Everyone else's stickers suck. Hey y'all, Scott Horton here for The Future of Freedom, the journal of the Future Freedom Foundation. Every month, Plumline individualist editor Sheldon Richmond brings you important news and opinions on policy by heroic FFF President Jacob Hornberger, hard-hitting journalist columnist James Bovard, and others from the best of the libertarian movement. The Future of Freedom tackles the most important issues facing our country, from the bankrupt and insane welfare and regulatory states to foreign wars and empire, the dismal state of our economy, and ongoing assaults on civil liberties. This society needs peace and freedom for prosperity to prevail. Subscribe to the Future of Freedom in print for just $25 a year or online for $15 a year at fff.org/subscribe. And hurry up, because this summer they'll be running my articles about the wars in Libya, Syria, and Somalia in the Future of Freedom too. That's fff.org/subscribe for the Future of Freedom. And tell them Scott sent you.